prevention and management of infectious disease outbreaks in animal shelters. Speaker with us today is Dr. Erica Schumacher. She is the outreach veterinarian at the shelter medicine program at UW-Madison. We are very glad to have her with us again today, as she's been with us for other conferences as well. So Dr. Erica, get my right notes in front of me. Dr. Erica Schumacher fell in love with shelter medicine in 2003 when she joined the medical team at Dane County Humane Society in Madison, Wisconsin as a certified veterinary technician. Following her lifelong dream of becoming a veterinarian, she attended the University of Wisconsin-Madison School of Veterinary Medicine and worked with Dr. Sandra Newberry to create the school's first shelter medicine elective in 2004. After graduation, she traveled and worked in Arizona, Alaska, and Africa for several years. She later returned to her roots at DCHS as the chief shelter veterinarian, where she oversaw the medical team as well as the shelter's wildlife center for 7 years. She particularly enjoyed supervising the clinical training for the UW Shelter Medicine Program interns, residents, and veterinary students. In 2018, Dr. Schumacher joined the UW Shelter Medicine Program as an outreach veterinarian. She enjoys using her clinical background in shelter medicine as well as her love of teaching to help other shelters reach their life-saving potential. So we'll give a warm welcome to Dr. Erica Schumacher, and hopefully her presentation will work. I will go ahead and read the description of her presentation since the font is small, just in case someone forgot their reading glasses. So today's presentation, she will be talking about disease outbreak. A disease outbreak doesn't have to cause panic. You will learn how to recognize the most frequently encountered infectious diseases, including canine parvovirus, panleukopenia, ringworm, upper respiratory infection, and canine distemper virus. We'll also touch on less common pathogens such as canine influenza and Strep zoo, so you know what to do if they show up at your door. This session will give you a crash course on general outbreak management strategies to equip you with necessary knowledge to help manage and prevent outbreaks within your shelter population. And I think I've effectively killed enough time. Okay. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh boy. Okay, we can do this, everybody. We can do this. Perfect. Okay. I think we can. It's not. Lordy. No idea how that's happening.
Is Shara?
Okay. If my tech help can come back up, I'm going to just start talking. Erica Schumacher, I use she, her pronouns. Very happy to be here again. I've had the honor of speaking with the Minnesota conference many years now. Wanted to get a sense of who's here and tell you a little bit about our program as well. How many of you have worked at some point with the University of Wisconsin Shelter Medicine Program? Raise hands. Hi. Wonderful. There are a lot of different ways that we get involved with shelters. So our program is generously grant funded. So we are very lucky to not have to charge shelters for any of the things that we provide. A lot of the way we get involved with shelters is through outbreaks, infectious disease, and many of you might have interacted with us through that way. Somebody ends up with distemper in the shelter and they don't know what to do, and so they Google, and our name usually comes up because distemper is our jam. We do a lot of work with canine distemper. We have veterinary fellowships available for shelter veterinarians. That is a year-long fellowship where you get to learn. And I can use I don't have to use that if that works. Okay, we're back to it, perfect. Okay, I'll use the clicker. All right, we got this now. Our website,
We have a shared website library, an online library with UC Davis. So a lot of you are probably familiar with UC Davis Correct Shelter Medicine program, and you might use their library. Well, surprise, it's also our library, just different font. We are like sister programs, and so we share all of those things. So you can get to a lot of great information through that. We have a Northern Tier Animal Shelter Professionals Facebook page. How many of you are members of that Facebook group? Oh my gosh, so there's a lot of you that still need to join. So it's a private or secret group. I don't know, you have to just type in the name Northern Tier Animal Shelter Professionals and it will come up. You answer 3 questions and then you'll be added, and there's over 500 members, so you can interact with each other that way. I'm going to kind of get moving. Oh, we also have a Northern Tier Shelter Leadership Fellowship. So we just selected and have just started our new fellowship this year, but that is something we have for executive directors, shelter managers, operation directors, and it's a group of 4 to 7 shelters that come together, and you have 1 or 2 fellows, and you spend the whole year with us every other week on a call for an hour and a half. We start out with an in-person camp where we really learn the fundamentals of sheltering. We talk a lot about operations during that year. So look out next spring for those applications. Okay, shout out to Maddie's Fund, who does a lot of funding of our program and any of our infectious disease outbreak work. They are huge supporters. So if you're a shelter and you have 80 dogs with distemper, hopefully not in Minnesota, but it happens, right? And you don't know what to do, and 80 PCRs is going to cost you a lot of money, Maddie's Fund will step up as long as you promise to manage this outbreak in a life-saving way. So big thanks to Maddie's for helping. Okay, we talked a little bit about who I am. We're going to skip through that. I want to know who you are, okay? So how many of you are in a private nonprofit shelter? Any municipal shelter folks? Sweet. Animal control officers? 1. Veterinarians. I know we got 1 right here. Oh, sweet. I love to see the vets. Vet techs. Wonderful. Directors, any executive directors in the house? Okay, wonderful. Care staff? Yeah, raise your hand, raise your hand. Good, wonderful. It helps me to know who my audience is. Thank you. Okay, these are some of our learning objectives. Most importantly is that we want to be really practical, right? Because you can read all this stuff in a textbook and it's not necessarily going to help you figure out how to manage infectious disease outbreak. Okay, what's an outbreak? Basically, just defined as a greater number of cases than you're used to seeing. Right? Or either greater severity of disease than you're used to seeing. We will see outbreaks of infectious disease that is endemic in the shelter, meaning it's just kind of always there. And so we might see some areas that have distemper in the community. Like it's just always there. And in shelters like that, distemper might walk in the door any given day. And so a distemper outbreak in a shelter in that community is going to look very different than a distemper outbreak where someone transferred it in to the shelter, right? So in Minnesota and a lot of northern tier shelters, we're transferring in animals that might have disease that we're not used to seeing in our community. Those things can look different. Consequences of an outbreak, right? So here in Minnesota, I'm guessing that when you think of outbreaks, you're typically thinking about ringworm, parvo, panleuk, right? Distemper, maybe not so common here, except through transfer. We worry about spread to the community. We worry about spread within the shelter. How hard is it on staff when you're dealing with an outbreak, right? Like that is the absolute worst thing when all of a sudden you gotta get dressed up in all this plastic, spend all this extra time, go through protocols. How are you gonna message to the community? How are you gonna message to adopters? What are you gonna do about intake? It is a big ordeal. So we know, and then maybe you can't even get the animals out, right? Because you have to hold them for a certain time, you're treating them. That adds to your daily population, right? So then you have more animals in the shelter, more crowding leads to more disease. That's no fun. Don't panic, I got your back. I love this cartoon so much. Because stuff happens, right? But that's when our program is here to help you. So you can always count on us to be there for you. Just have to email, text, call. It's what we do regularly. We do a lot of other stuff too, like I'm here speaking, but outbreak management is something we drop everything for to help you. And if you've ever been on the receiving end of a consultation with us for that, you know. Okay, so we're gonna talk about pathogens or bugs that are of greater concern, and then things that our program doesn't really worry about that much. So things we do worry about: parvo, distemper, canine influenza, strep zoo. How many of you have heard of strep zoo? Okay, so we'll talk about that a little bit more later. Feline panleukopenia, which is often mistakenly called distemper, kitty distemper. It's not distemper. Distemper is a wimpy virus in the environment. Panleukopenia is a hardy virus in the environment. Panleukopenia is a parvovirus. So you all know that canine parvo is awful. Panleukopenia is the cat version of that, okay? And then ringworm. But we're going to talk specifically about Microsporum canis, and we have a whole hour to talk about ringworm, so I'm not going to talk much about that this hour. Things we don't worry about that much in cats, pretty much all the respiratory diseases. Calicivirus is something I think a lot of shelters still freak out about, and you don't have to, okay? There are a lot of things that can cause lesions on the tongue. It's not all calici, but I think commonly in shelters, if there's a lesion on the tongue or an ulcer on the tongue, we are worrying about calicivirus. Lots of cats have calici, and you don't see a thing, and you're adopting them out every day. So we're not going to worry too much about calici. Dogs, parainfluenza, pneumovirus, mycoplasma bordetella, these are all kennel cough bugs. So when we talk about kennel cough or canine infectious respiratory disease complex, CIRDC, it's a complex. It's lots of different bugs, bacteria, viruses. It's not that these things can't cause an outbreak per se, it's not that big a deal. It's not going to kill animals like some of the other things will. Okay, respiratory disease. What about feline respiratory disease? What is the biggest cause of respiratory disease in shelters? Yeah, which leads to stress, right? Stress. So our housing is the most important thing that we can do. If you're dealing with a lot of feline respiratory disease, you need to take a good look at your housing and a really good look at the number of cats you're caring for. I guarantee if you're operating within your capacity for care and you have double-sided housing, more than 8 square feet, ideally 11 square feet per cat, you're not going to see respiratory disease like you are now. So if you're willing to close your eyes, this is a way of, I'm going to take a hand-raising poll, but then it eliminates all the, oh my gosh, someone's going to think I don't know about XYZ. So close your eyes if you're comfortable and tell me what are the things, tell me if you feel like you need to learn a whole lot more about parvo. Close your eyes, raise your hand if you feel like you need to learn a lot more about parvo. Okay, what about canine influenza? Distemper, canine distemper. Strep zoo. Panleukopenia. And finally, ringworm. Okay, well, I was hoping for more hands on ringworm because we got a whole hour to talk about that next time. We'll be okay. Okay, thank you very much. That's helpful for me to know. We have a lot to cover, and I'll just try to focus in more on what you want to know about. Okay, things we don't need to do. We don't need to routinely quarantine new intakes. This is a practice that needs to go away. It was previously thought, well, any new intake could have some horrible disease, and if we don't hold them and watch for that horrible disease to present itself, we might miss something, we're gonna spread it to the rest of our population. What happens when you take in all of these new animals, they're vulnerable because they've not been, their vaccine hasn't had time to take effect. They are all together. They are gonna share their disease. So you actually increase the risk of disease. The one time I will say that you have to house your animals wisely is if you have all group housing. I don't want you to take animals off the street or surrender or whatever and put them all in a group housing space together. We want to wait at least 3 days before that happens after their vaccine, so their vaccine has had time to work. We don't want to test puppies, healthy puppies, on intake for parvo. There's no need to do that. Could spend an hour talking about why, but don't do that. And we don't